It looks like they're starting off. And pretty soon here, you'll see use of Ophilia's path action. Now, path actions are a unique part of Octopath. Each of the 8 characters have their own path action that they can use to interact with NPCs. Ophilia is being guide, which usually is used to progress story, where she'll take NPCs like this little boy and take him to his mother. Well, you'll see a common theme of Ophilia guiding kids throughout her story. And yeah, so Ophilia can also use guide to take NPCs with her into battle, which will happen depending on which route these runners are taking. Since there are many routes that were recently made for Ophilia due to the tournament, we really don't know which route either of them could be taking. And here's another use of guide to bring the tavern patron with them. He has an ability called Summon Winds, which will be very helpful in the first boss fight. And as you can see also, this game features a skip cutscene button, which makes it a lot better than most JRPGs when it comes to speedrunning. So you're not sitting there mashing through text screens. Instead, you can just hold B and deal with it that way, which is a really big part of how these single-story speedruns can be done in under an hour and sometimes even under 50 minutes. And now we're heading into like the first danger area where there's going to be enemies, and you'll see the first main parts of Octopath's combat system, which is breaking and boosting. You can see Dalia opted to break an enemy, while LostC0re attempted to just what is called the YOLO flee, where you run away without breaking. Each enemy has a set weakness and a set number of shields, and LostC0re is just getting really unlucky right now. But when an enemy is is hit by a weakness, so like that lizard man was weak to staffs, Dalia hit it with a staff. LostC0re just getting surprised by an encounter, which is another thing that can happen. Just really losing a lot of time. This is unfortunate, truly. Wow, he might actually die. Okay, he escaped. So, yeah, as you can just see with Dalia, just broke a wolf. And when an enemy is broken, a few things happen. For one thing, they can't do anything. They are just completely removed from the turn order. And for another thing, they take double damage from all sources, and then if it's a regular enemy like this wolf, LostC0re is just getting awful RNG of this chapter 1. But if all enemies are broken, you get a guaranteed flee, which is what Dalia was doing before, and what LostC0re might want to start doing pretty soon. So anyways, if we go over to Dalia, you can see that the Guardian is weak to wind, and the Tavern Patron is using a Summon Winds attack, which will hit all enemies for 3 wind hits, so it'll lower the Guardian shield by 3 every time, which is extremely helpful for not only speeding up the fight in terms of getting his shields down and getting him broken, but also just for dealing damage. You can see there it dealt about 300 damage for Dalia, and now LostC0re is starting up the fight as well, quite a bit behind due to that bad RNG with encounters. But it seems like Summon Winds is coming through for both runners pretty well. Dalia getting a solid second break, and will soon be finishing up this fight. Another thing is boosting. Now, at the start of every combat, all your characters will have 1 BP, or the little orange balls at the top above their HP. Every turn you don't use a BP, you gain a BP, and you can use those BPs to increase the powers of your attack. So as you saw, once the Guardian was broken, Dalia and LostC0re both were able to use max BPs on their Holy Light ability, which allowed them to deal a lot more damage to the Guardian. And LostC0re just really got screwed over by encounter. Thankfully, his Guardian fight does not seem to be going too bad, and he'll soon be able to catch up to Dalia. And while Dalia now is heading towards getting the second character in this group of probably 3, since 3 character routes are all the rage now. So Dalia will likely be going to Atlas Dam to pick up Cyrus. Now, the reason runners tend to, or most routes tend to do the chapter 1 and then immediately go to Atlas Dam and get Cyrus is because Cyrus' base class is a Scholar, and Scholar, while being really good casually because it's a very high damaging elemental base class, speedrunning is also very good since its first passive ability that you can unlock after unlocking some skills for that class is evasive maneuvers, and evasive maneuvers is one of the core reasons why single story routes, as well as every other route, is so short, because it takes your encounter rate and it cuts it down by a lot. I couldn't tell you the exact numbers because no one knows the exact numbers in this game, but we have a pretty good guess that it's like a third or so. Evasive maneuvers is a very powerful skill and lets you just run through areas, especially high-level areas, without getting encounters, and lets you get really good loot before you probably should be able to. That's an interesting thing Dalia just did, where he switched the order of his party. I've actually never seen people do that before, specifically with single story routes. I know it happens in longer routes for faster menuing, but I've never seen it done in this setting before. It's also interesting, he didn't buy a quartz rod for Cyrus either and opted instead for a light rod. So these are some interesting strats coming from Dalia. And I just now realizing that the switching up the order of party allowed him to use Cyrus's path action Scrutinize without having to go through extra inputs. Now, Cyrus's path action Scrutinize lets him just interrogate random NPCs, and sometimes they'll have information, sometimes they will have they'll know where a hidden item is, which is when it's mostly used. Especially in this early part, you picked up a soul stone, a couple soul stones actually, one small, one medium, light soul stone. And those soul stones will deal a flat damage to any enemy, regardless of their defense, and regardless of your character's attack stat, which is, as you can tell, will probably be very strong in a speedrun where you have underleveled characters. And having those soul stones is going to be very important for a few things, depending on the route that they're taking, and will also be extremely helpful for an upcoming fight in a place called Whistlewood. Dalia getting not the worst turn order in the world. For Cyrus, you usually want him to go before both of the little spear boys turn 2 so that he can break them and they don't get to act. But he seems like Cyrus is getting bullied pretty hard. And LostC0re got a run-in with Mr. Bones. Mr. Bones is one you usually don't want to see. Thankfully, I think he's still able to kill him in one turn. But usually you will kill 2 encounters in this area because in order to get enough JP on Cyrus for Lightning Blast after this fight. But the Sentinels give 5 JP after you kill them, and Mr. Bones only gives you 4. So when you're unable to get that last little bit of JP because of Mr. Bones, it can really screw over the early parts of the run. But thankfully, when you kill an enemy in one turn, you get a little bonus to JP. That gives him the extra JP in order to be able to... in order to be able to get enough JP for Lightning Blast after this fight. And it looks like Dalia is probably going to be finishing up Russell pretty soon here. Maybe someone wins Guy. No. Only another turn from Cyrus. Yep. There we go. It seems like LostC0re will soon be finishing up Russell. Maybe one more break on Russell, and then he'll be done, and Dalia will soon be finishing up Cyrus's Chapter 1. And heading out to the infamous Whistlewood. Now, Whistlewood is commonly used in runs since it is a relatively high-level area right next to Cyrus's hometown of Atlasdam. And Dalia just got a good encounter. Ants are very good for JP. And will manage to be good. Will be good for backups in case he does not get a good Whistlewood encounter. Now, Whistlewood has the potential to give you an encounter that gives you 100 JP. It has potential to give you many encounters that give you more than 100 JP. But it also has enough encounters that will not give you enough JP for evasive maneuvers. And usually you will use the light M stone that you scrutinized in Atlasdam in order to try and kill the Whistlewood encounter. So usually, since you only have one light M stone, you kind of want to find one good encounter and go with it, but that's not typically what happens, as any runner of this game will know. Whistlewood tends to be the breaking point of a lot of runs, so it's interesting to see how these runners will do in a tournament setting where they can't exactly reset a run to try to get a good Whistlewood. Dalia not quite getting an encounter and getting the worst encounter. Oh, technically the worst killable encounter. And he does take it. He will kill it with the light M and try to grind for backups and hope for ants. I believe that encounter gives around 60-something JP when you kill it first turn, and Cyrus needs 100, so you're definitely far off. But Dalia getting 2 ants might just give him enough to grab evasive maneuvers. LostC0re also going into Whistlewood and getting the same bad encounter with one frog. With one big frog, the rest very small frogs. Another thing that can happen, well, it looks like Dalia was able to get evasive maneuvers and have enough JP for that through backups. And LostC0re got a Kate after Whistlewood, which has just got to be the worst thing I've ever seen. I'm so sorry. And he's tossing coins at him too. So for those that don't know, a Kate is a very strong, very rare encounter, about a 3% chance in most areas. And it gives a lot of experience and a lot of JP. It is very hard to kill and will typically run the first turn it gets. So it using that little move where it throws some money at LostC0re is a very rare thing to happen. So seeing that after he already took Whistlewood is very annoying, because usually you can get usually if you get a Kate before Whistlewood, with Cyrus, you just can skip Whistlewood because you have enough JP for evasive maneuvers. And if you get it before Cyrus, then you can do a Ophilia Kate route, which stays about 2 minutes because you don't have to do the whole Cyrus, you don't have to do the whole first Cyrus fight, the Russell fight with all those spears and stuff. But yeah, what LostC0re got will save him a bit of RNG depending on what route he takes. If he takes the 3-character inhibit route, he'll be able to skip a 50% scrutinize. And also have a little bit of higher chances with other percent scrutinizes. But yeah, overall that Kate was pretty minimal compared to other Kates. Definitely sort of just like a rub in the face, kick in the face. It looks like Dalia is heading down to Ripple-Tide to get the 3rd character, possibly final character. Actually, wait. No, he's not. He is skipping Ripple-Tide. This is interesting. Okay, so it seems like Dalia is doing Therian route, which I guess doesn't get Tressa this early. I guess they have enough money where they don't need Tressa's passive ability of just generating money by existing. We will see LostC0re come and pick up Tressa, though. Now, Tressa is by far the most popular character in Octopath speedrunning, simply because she's just a very powerful character. She, first of all, has the merchant class as her base class, which is debatably, but not really debatably, the strongest base class in the game, with access to just a lot of tools, including hired help, which you will be seeing a lot from in this speedrun. Hired help is an attack that, instead of using your actual attack stat, will use money. And its main attack, Hired Help Veterans, the strongest one, takes quite a bit of money, but does quite a bit of damage. And with it not being tied down to your stats, you're not punished for using it at such a low level, which obviously is very helpful in a speedrun. So Tressa is not only has the merchant class as her base class, which means she can just get all the hired help and everything else it has to offer for free. She also has a passive ability called Eye for Money, and what it does is it turns cute baby Tressa into a grave robber who will steal money off of the corpses she finds loitering around areas, which can be very helpful as that money scales up depending on the danger level of the area. So if you take Tressa into a high danger level area, she will generate quite a bit of money and be able to help you afford a lot more stuff. Typically very well paired with her path action purchase, which unlike Ophilia's path action, which is locked behind level, where you have to be a certain level to guide certain NPCs, and if you're not at that level, you just can't get it. Tressa's path action requires dependent purely on money. If you have enough money, you can buy items from NPCs. Now, she does have another part where you can get a discount for certain items, which you see more reliance on in longer categories, like completing all main stories or the secret final boss category, where it's basically a full run of the game. But in the single story routes, the discounts aren't really as important. But being able to just buy any item from any NPC as long as you have enough money is pretty good. And now Dalia will be doing what we call a save reload, which I haven't explained. Whoops. But basically, Octopath encounter RNG is less so RNG and more so based off step count. The longer you step normally, more steps you take, the more steps you take, the higher chance you have of an encounter. Normally, there's a certain amount of steps you take before you have a guaranteed encounter. So, well, not a guaranteed, but you have a certain amount of steps you take with guaranteed and no encounter. With evasive maneuvers, that length is greatened or is increased a lot. And we see now Dalia going to back to Tressa to pick her up, and it seems like he will be using a Wind Soulstone L, likely to kill Tressa's Chapter 1. Now you saw LostC0re had to use a light Soulstone L, and a light Soulstone Medium to kill Tressa's Chapter 1 boss. But since both bosses are weak to wind elements, using a Wind Soulstone L will deal bonus damage and be able to kill them outright instantly, saving Dalia and M-Stone, which can be pretty helpful. So yeah, as I was saying, the step counter for Octopath, instead of it just being, oh, you have a random chance to get an encounter all the time, there's a certain amount of steps you take before you can guarantee to not get an encounter. That steps is reset when transferring to a new area with a new name and new danger level, and when you enter the game. So at save points, if you save the game and then exit out and reload that save, your step counter comes back to 0, which is very helpful in going through high-level areas where if you get an encounter, you will, 1, not be able to kill it, and 2, likely die. Like, almost guaranteed you're gonna die. So, having that access to just be able to go to higher danger level areas without without the fear of getting absolutely run over by an endgame encounter is evidently very helpful when it comes to getting loot, since a lot of the loot in late game areas is very helpful for speedruns. And we can see LostC0re following Dalia's footsteps going to Grand Port, which is a very which is an area with quite a bit of loot. Dalia picked up some money chests, or actually a money chest. He did not go to Lock of Lost King. So he picked up a chest with lots of money, and he picked up a few chests with soulstones in them, which are both very helpful in these speedruns. So now I believe Dalia will be... actually, I do not know. I don't know Therian route. I assume he'd be heading to go pick up Therian now. I guess, yeah, he did not tag Cobblestone, so he will have to walk all the way. But he does get these surprises on his enemies, and the more, well, not the more, when you surprise an enemy, it's one of the very few times where you have a guaranteed flee. So when you surprise an enemy, you don't need to break them, you can just straight up run away, and it saves quite a bit of time that way. And we can see LostC0re taking the Grand Port items. And I believe LostC0re is doing 3-character inhibit, so I believe he will be taking the Lock of the Lost King loot. But first he has to make it to Grand Port without getting an encounter. And he had a little bit of trouble on a plant, but still managed to get without an encounter. That can be a very dangerous screen, and is a very infamous screen for many runners. And it looks like he will be going to Lock of Lost King. He'll be getting another Wind Soulstone L and a 30k chest with 30,000 leaves in it. Actually looks like Dalia's not getting Therian, and instead just going straight to Saint's Bridge. Again, I don't really know Therian route, so he probably he's probably getting Therian. at some point. And not doing that. Dalia getting a cultured Kate encounter using a Thunder L to kill it. Which is interesting since cultured Kates will in fact die to an M stone. But that's another type of Kate. There are 3 types of Kates. The regular Kate and the cultured Kate will both die to a single M stone. The cultured Kate gives a little bit more experience, a little more JP, a little more money. And the third type, chubby Kate, those Kates are big fat boys, and they have a lot of money, EXP, JP. They give you a lot of loot. They're only found in late game areas, so towns and areas like very far from the center of the map. And they take quite a bit of damage before they are able to be killed. Kates, as you saw, like Kates took a lot less damage than anything else. It's because they have an innate resistance where they only take 1% or like 1/100th of the damage dealt to them. Minimum of taking 1 damage, obviously. Kates have a 4 health. Cultured Kates, I believe, have 10? Something like that. And then chubby Kates have around 100. So if, you do the math, that's about 10,000 damage you need to be able to deal to a chubby Kate. And that is usually not able to be done without some pretty hefty equipment. Since a single large soulstone will only deal 27 damage to them, and so you'll need about 4 of those in order to kill a chubby Kate. Usually, you don't really kill those until you have some better classes, better equipment and stuff. And you usually don't see them in these speedruns, either since actually taking an encounter in higher level areas is usually just a death sentence. Dalia getting an encounter in Swarky and not able to run away on the first turn. Unfortunately, losing quite a bit of time here. Managed to get away, and LostC0re is starting with Ophilia's second chapter. So you can see Dalia here heading into Clifflands to go grab Therian and Boulderfall. And Boulderfall has very cool music. The music in this game is very top-notch. You can't really play the game without noticing just the amazing soundtrack it has. But I believe LostC0re will be sticking... It seems like LostC0re is sticking with 3 characters. The 3-character inhibit route. While Dalia goes for the safer Therian route. Now, the difference between the 2 routes is that hired help veterans, as I mentioned earlier, is not dependent on your attack stat, but is dependent on the enemy's defense stat. So... if you're able to debuff the enemy's physical defense, hired help veterans will deal 1.5 times more damage, which can be very helpful when you're trying to minimize the amount of money you spend on vets, and only need to use, the minimum number. So being able to make the most out of each vet will be very helpful. Now, Therian's base class is Thief, and Thief has access to a lot of debuffs, Shackle Foe, and Armor Corrosive. Armor Corrosive lowers one enemy's physical defense for turns, but that's the main reason most vets will pick up Therian, is for the Armor Corrosive to make vets a little stronger. So that's the main reason. Well, that's why Dalia is picking up Therian now, is for the armor corrosive. And LostC0re will, instead of picking up Therian for a guaranteed armor corrosive, he will be guiding an NPC in Saintsbridge a little later. And by a little later, I mean like probably in like 2 minutes or so. And that NPC has every turn it is out, it has a 1 in 3 chance of using inhibit defense, which will lower the defense, both physical and elemental, even though elemental doesn't really matter, of all enemies for about 3 turns. Now that's sort of the change here. Dalia will be going for a more consistent, slightly slower route by picking up Therian and having that guaranteed armor corrosive whenever he needs it. While LostC0re will be going for the slightly faster route of not having to pick up Therian and being able to just pray that he gets inhibit defense when he needs to. So for this fight, you do not have inhibit defense, you just throw extra L stones for the damage. And as I was talking, LostC0re was doing a menu to give, I believe, all. I'm not sure if Cyrus got it, but pretty much all of his characters a support skill for Merchant called Endless Items. Now, Endless Items is whenever that character using that attack, or that whenever a character that has Endless Items uses an item, they have a 25% chance to have a little sparkling thing come out of their hand and not use the item, essentially duping it. Now, the 3-character inhibit route doesn't depend on you getting endless item procs, but it greatly benefits from you getting endless item procs. So LostC0re not getting any endless item procs during the big dog fight, which has a name that if I were to pronounce would probably offend many people. It's got a very interesting spelling. I believe it is pronounced something similar to Prodniver. But yeah, so he just threw a couple extra L stones at the dog, and now he will be doing getting a bunch of items in Grandport to sell for money, as well as buying some items from some NPCs, going a little bit of a shopping spree, and also buying a few extra soul stones as backup. Now, the inhibit route will sometimes use those L stones, soul stones, to try to make up extra damage if you don't get inhibit. But seeing as inhibit is almost required to do Ophilia's final chapter boss, effectively, it makes it a very very RNG based fight. Whereas it makes sense that, oh yeah, if you have like 1 in 3 chance to do it, and you have like the span of 9 turns to do it, you should eventually get inhibit. Many route runners will feel safer not relying on on something like inhibit, as you can see Dalia using their in route. But even with all its flaws, I personally use inhibit route since it seems to have enough backup where even having unlikely RNG that you can usually recover from. And Dalia going into the big dog that is hard to pronounce a little later than LostC0re, but being able to save a few L stones along the way Now, LostC0re is going over to guide his inhibit defense NPC right now, right after buying some bracelets. And it seems like he bought empowering rings from one NPC. Gonna be honest, I don't really know what that's all about, but he sure did it. So now LostC0re will be heading towards Ophilia's Chapter 3 fight, known as Mysterious Man and Shady Duo, or Shady Figure. I just call them the Street Boys. Personally, it's a lot easier to say than Mr. and you know, their whole name. And as you can see, Dalia is able to clean up the fight. Instead of using 3 L stones, is able to use an M stone and a little bit of extra damage from HP Thief, which is a strong thief skill that hits twice, so it does a lot of damage compared to other skills. So I've just been informed that what LostC0re did buying an empowering ring and some extra soul stones in Grandport was because the Kate giving Ophilia enough HP to survive some hits, so she didn't need the bracelet in order to survive. She just needed a ring. And so here we have the Street Boys who have kidnapped a child from the church, and they are here. We are here, I guess, to take them out. And so LostC0re is going to be looking for an inhibit defense right about now. He did not, but thankfully at least he hit the shields down a little bit, which does help, even if it is just a tiny amount. Still no inhibit defense, so yeah, he's going to want to use a few backup strats just in case he doesn't get one this turn coming up. And Dancer is doing a lot of debuffs and is able to get inhibit defense, so he's able to save a few L stones here, even if I think it's just one. So right there you can see Cyrus just duped an M stone with endless items. That's not as impactful as, say, duping an L stone, because since the L stones are obviously deal more damage, so it's better to have more of them. But anyways, LostC0re will be soon finishing up Ophilia's Chapter 3 and heading on to do Chapter 4, where a lot of these inhibit routes runs tend to die, since in order to beat her Chapter 4, you need an inhibit defense at some point in the fight. So there's a chance that if you just don't get inhibit defense, you lose. You just lose the fight and you have to restart from the last save point, which isn't too bad, but it definitely can lose a lot of time, especially like in a race setting like this, where Dalia has nearly a guaranteed Ophilia Chapter 4 fight. You can see LostC0re grabbing some backup money from a scrutinized noble court, just to be a little safer, which is very fair. And now he'll be heading out to Whispermill. Now, Whispermill is one of 2 areas where you cannot go all the way through, at least to what you need, without an encounter. So they will. LostC0re here is prepping for the encounter by giving Ophilia Warrior with 1,000 spears, since this encounter is weak to spears, and 1,000 spears has a neat little thing where it doesn't care about your accuracy or the enemy's evasion. It will still hit at least one enemy at least 3 times. So he's hoping that he can hit these plains drakes a couple times in order to break them and run away from them. Okay, he managed to hit both of them twice with 1,000 spears, which isn't the most likely thing to happen. And I managed to get a 1-turn break and into a flea. Now, it's very rare, but sometimes you will see a second encounter on this screen, and that second encounter is not guaranteed to be plains drakes. And if you get that second encounter, you're very rare to be able to actually break the encounter and run away. So if you get it, you're pretty much screwed. But here's LostC0re in Whisper Mill, the final area for Ophilia's story. And here he will be selling everything he has in order to get enough money to use vets. And right now he has enough. 90,000. A little bit extra. And Dalia will be heading into Ophilia's Chapter 3 fight. Basically, he's hoping that LostC0re gets some bad RNG on Matthias, the Chapter 4 fight for Ophilia, and does not get inhibit, which will lose him quite a bit of time and put Dalia a little bit more into the lead. Or at least not so far in the back. So there's Dalia giving armor corrosive to each of the bosses with Therian remotely instead of doing it through an inhibit defense NPC. And he'll soon be taking out them with some vets and maybe a soulstone or 2. And now LostC0re will be heading down, picking up this last 30,000 money chest, and fighting one more encounter before the great Matthias fight. Now this encounter can kill you if they decide to use 2 very strong attacks. But they usually do not. They usually just smack you with their staffs. And will just try to focus themselves up. Luckily for LostC0re, they did not use their powerful attacks, and he was able to dupe another L-Stone. So he'll have an extra one going into Matthias. And here we'll pretty much... I know it sounds kind of weird saying the finale will decide the victor, but it really will, since if LostC0re gets a first try Matthias, obviously he will win this, since there's no real way he can do that, and Dalia can catch up. But if he gets very far into Matthias without getting an inhibit, he'll lose a lot of time, and Dalia might be able to come back from this. So it really just depends what happens here. He does get double tapped on Tressa, which is not good. That's very rare to happen. So he's going to try to recover from this. He's going to try to break him and then revive Tressa with an all of life. Managing to dupe another L-Stone, giving a little bit more safety room for not getting inhibits. And we'll see here, he does get a first try inhibit, not quite a first turn inhibit. And he does get another inhibit, so this looks like LostC0re is going to be able to take this as long as he doesn't do some serious messing up with the menuing. And Dalia breaking the plane strikes and heading on over to Whisper Mill. And LostC0re absolutely going ham with the hired help veterans on a weakened, frail Matthias, who's really not even a boss fight. He's just an extended cutscene, especially if you're playing casually with on-level characters. But all LostC0re needs to do now is break Matthias one more time. And he will be able to end this fight and this race. So that was an interesting thing he did there with Cyrus. Not using an optimal vet, but still having the soul stones to make up for it, so still managed to get the fight done. And right there, his time is done, 46:53, a very respectable time for this. Very, very good. And so we're going to go ahead and invite him in for a post-race. I don't know. So Dalia just about to start up. Oh, hello.
Hello.
So that was a pretty good race.
Yeah, really good.
Mm-hmm. It was a good run. The Kate out after Whistlewood must have been a little bit of insult to injury.
He helped me a little, at least. I'll admit that.
You did get to get some extra stones, although seemingly didn't really need them. With the pretty solid Matthias fight you had there. 2 inhibits, pretty back to back, even though Tressa did go down.
Yeah, I got double tapped on that fight. So I was just glad to finish that fight, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it seemed like you were able to come back from it too, which was pretty nice.
Yeah, other than that Matthias fight, everything past Cyrus Chapter 1 was really, really solid.
Mm-hmm. It did seem like that, yeah. And here we have Dalia heading into the Matthias fight after the cultists. With Therian route too, so it'll be pretty guaranteed for him as long as he doesn't get double tapped.
Yeah, the only really rough parts were the very beginning and the very end for my run. I nearly died on the first screen.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember seeing that. That was a really bad encounter RNG, but you managed to come back from that pretty good. So yeah, there's that. So overall, like, just what were your just thoughts on the race itself?
I wasn't watching where Dalia was, but I definitely think my run was pretty good. I doubt many people are going to beat this time in this tournament, if anyone does.
It was a very solid time, 46:53. I might actually check to see what that is on the. That's not a PB, is it?
No, my PB is 44. I'm in second.
Okay, yeah, so that's still a very solid time. 46:53 would put you, well, that time, anyways, would be pretty high on the leaderboards. It would be many runners would be hard pressed to get that time normally, regardless in a race tournament scenario.
Yeah. I was going to mention, those stones that I bought in Grenport, I always buy those anyways, no matter what. It's just that the Kate freed up a little extra money. Usually I would save and quit at the near the end of Chapter 3. Very fast fight from Dalia, by the way.
Oh yeah, that was a very quick fight with Darian using Armor Corrosive to help make that a little more guaranteed. But yeah, I think that was a pretty good run. I think we might get Dalia in now. Hear his thoughts.
Merci.
Yeah, GG's to both the runners. And we'll see if Dalia joins us for a post-race interview. Doesn't seem like Dalia is gotten the invite yet. All right. Well, we can give Dalia a few more minutes. Let these credits scroll. But if he doesn't want to join us, we just call it here. All right. Well, it seems like Dalia will not be joining us for a post-race interview. So I think that'll be all for this. It was a very good run from both runners. LostC0re managing to win on the RNG side with inhibit defense. And yeah, that'll be all. There's some more stuff coming up on this channel, so stay tuned for that. I have been your commentator, Redrick, and make sure to stay tuned for more runs. Since this is a full-fledged tourney, there are brackets and everything, so there's going to be more runs in the future on this and other SpeedGaming sites, or Twitch accounts. So yeah, that'll be it, everyone.